Hi everyone, thank you for watching. My name is Reece Coombes and we're with Kipper Central, and joining me today is UKIP Interim Leader Gerard Batten. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
So first of all, it's been 31 days since Henry Bolton was removed and you were quickly put in by the NEC as UKIP Leader. Do you think Nigel Farage's description of the job as the hardest job in the world is a fair one?
So, when Henry Bolton got the job, I said to him, Henry, you've got the hardest job in British politics. And now, 6 months later, I find myself doing it in the wake of Henry Bolton, and it's a lot harder, courtesy of Henry Bolton. So yeah, I don't know it's the hardest one in the world. Being the opposition in Russia might be harder because you might get shot, but this is hard enough.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, you know, it's not been an easy few weeks for you. You've had the Russia thing in Salisbury, you've had the Brexit deal announced just yesterday, you've had the Telford scandal. How have you found dealing with all the constant different news stories coming out?
Well, I've been doing it now for four weeks. I'm into my 5th week. Most of that time has been firefighting the mess that I actually inherited. Thinking about politics has been the thing I've had least time for, and I'm not exaggerating. There have been these things, and of course I've said what I can about them. Yesterday, I spent most of the day dealing with another crisis.
Oh yeah, I mean...
And I didn't get to think about the Brexit deal until the end of the day and try to read up on what had actually happened that day.
Yeah.
So it's really, I mean, one day I'll write this up, but I inherited nothing except a financial crisis. The only good thing that I inherited was the people down at Lexstrom House in our HQ in Devon. We got 8 people working down there, and they are fantastic. And because of them, we've actually got a structure for the admin of the party that allows me to do something for the rest of the party. The branches out there all over the country. So thank goodness for them. They're a great bunch of people, and the rest of it has really just been trying to raise money and firefighting. But I have made a lot of progress.
Yeah, I think the whole party would agree with you in congratulating Lexstrom for the work they did.
Yes.
I think, you know, you highlighted the fact that you inherited a financial crisis that was added to a lot over the last few days with the legal issue of £175,000. Obviously UKIP has the opportunity to appeal that. Are we going to do so?
No, because our legal advice is that it's not worth appealing because it will just cost you a lot more in legal costs and you won't actually materially change anything. So if I just go back to the beginning, when I first got the job, I went straight down to Devon with the Treasurer and the people down there to look at the situation. Immediately, it wasn't a surprise, I knew it was going to happen. We had a big black hole. We were drifting into the red very quickly, and I had to raise £100,000 in order to cover the existing creditors' bills and then put the party on an even keel so that we could actually function on our membership fees, and that's my objective. I think Henry was trying to do a very similar thing, to be fair to him. So what I immediately did was, actually the first thing I did was drop Lenny the line, but the second thing I did was write a fundraising letter to the members. That's been delayed going out because of the bad weather and 1 or 2 other factors. But now I'm very pleased to say that we've moved into the black. So that problem is solved. We've moved into the black in terms of our operational costs, but I still need people to send money in because we still need to pay for things. And I knew that the problem was looming regarding the libel case, and yesterday the court order turned up saying that we have to pay £175,000 as an interim payment. And then the court will decide what the actual payment is. It's kind of a deposit, so there might be more, it might actually be less. They might actually decide when they've reviewed it all that it might be less. I can't say, that's the legal, I leave that to the lawyers. But I am reliably informed that we have a solution. We certainly have a plan to deal with it, and it will not be the end of UKIP. I'm very confident that we'll be able to deal with that problem. I don't have a timescale yet for when that money's got to be paid, but we do have a plan for dealing with it, and I am very confident that we will. And this will not be the end of UKIP. So I could see all our opponents and our enemies dancing on our grave, but they're a bit premature because we're not actually dead. You know, the news of our death was premature. We're not dead. So we're still going to be there.
That's very good to hear. I mean, obviously the media were reporting that the time frame to pay the £175,000 was 48 hours. Is that not true?
No. In fact, there was no time. These things can be 14 days, 21 days, 28 days, and there was no time scale on the actual document that I read. So it's back with the lawyers to actually find out what the time scale is. And of course, it would be reasonable of the court to give us time to actually raise the money and pay it. There would not be any point in them telling us we had to pay it in 48 hours, we go bust, and then they don't get the money anyway. What would be the point of that? So these are things that, as I say, which have to be left with the lawyers. I can't comment on that too much, but I am confident that we can solve the problem.
So do we have the money reserved for the 175 grand? Is that the money we've got ready to pay?
Well, I'd rather not say too much about it. Please leave it with me. Just not just trust me, but the other people now. You know, we've got a new chairman, a new treasurer, and we're all working together to actually try and solve this problem.
Okay. Yesterday, moving on to a new topic, we saw Theresa May's new Brexit deal,
Yeah.
where she achieved, well, she achieved things.
Betrayal, I think, is what she achieved.
Yeah. What do you think of the deal? Do you think there's any progress at all for Britain?
Well, first of all, it's not a deal, because what it is the legal structure for a deal, and that's the withdrawal agreement, which yet has to be produced and has to be voted on by the European Parliament. And that's going to form a large part of what I'm talking about tonight, because, you know, this is now, you know, we're almost 2 years, we're not far short of 2 years now, another 3 months, it'll be 2 years since the referendum. What have we done in that time? Very little, almost nothing. What has she agreed yesterday? Well, we're now going to have this transition period. We'll actually go up to 2020, but we're going to continue paying money and be obliged to do things up to about 2022. We're going to have to pay them a load of money. We're going to have to pay all the laws that are made between now and 2020. We're going to have the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice to decide what those laws mean, and we're going to have open borders.
Yeah.
So we'll have everybody coming in who wants to come in up to 2020 in order to get under the wire, and it isn't just them, it's their relatives, their family anyway, who will be allowed to come as well, and of course they'll still be entitled to all benefits and housing, etc. So it will be, how long will that be, from 16, so that's 4 years. And all of that, none of that will have ever been decided. And what I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going to give 1 or 2 of these out to people, is a little book I wrote 3.5 years ago, it's published 3.5 years ago, in which I explained what would happen if there was a referendum, if we won. And of course what I said is there would be a relentless campaign by the establishment and by the Remainers to actually overturn it. I said that the tactics will be to delay, impede, so that they could eventually overturn. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And of course the danger with what she's agreed, or trying to agree, if we go up to 2020 and beyond, that goes up to the next general election, you could have Labour or Tories saying, well actually it was all a tremendous mistake and we're not going to leave, and they can overturn the referendum. The referendum has no legal force as such, although it has a more democratic legitimacy than most governments, since it got a higher percentage of votes than most governments ever get. They could claim that they have a fresh mandate and they're overturning it. And of course, if you have the political establishment, Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, all arguing the same thing,
it's hard to stop it, isn't it?
Under the first past the post system, are people going to be brave enough to go out and vote for something else? So we'll have to wait and see. But this is why UKIP needs to come back as an electoral force, as an electoral threat. So that is actually, that part of my job of restoring the credibility in UKIP as a political party is actually harder than raising the money. Money can always be raised somehow or another. Regaining that political credibility, which so much has been done to damage it, is much more difficult, and that's my job. And I did write a little article prior to the EGM when Henry Bolton went, and I said the way that this party has been managed over the last couple of years is either total incompetence or sabotage, and I still haven't figured out which it is.
I think a lot of members feel exactly the same. On Brexit, one group of people that was really opposed to Brexit in Britain, but really pro-Brexit across Europe, and really pro-anti-EU ideas across Europe, was young people, like myself. Young people across the whole world really are going right-wing and going pro-freedom and pro-independence from various globalist ideas. But in Britain, we see the opposite. How is UKIP leader, interim or longer, are you going to get more young people on side and deal with the problem that young people don't see in Britain?
You see, I don't understand. Well, I know why they're like that, because I have seen this myself. You have had 40 odd years or more of left-wing indoctrination and propaganda in schools, colleges and universities. So people they don't even know they've been indoctrinated, because everything is a certain way, so it's very difficult to think in a different way. But that's not quite true, because there are lots and lots of young people like you who don't actually buy the establishment narrative. And if I'm talking to an audience, and I've done spoken to lots of schools and colleges throughout my term, and I must admit I've noticed how it's got worse, quite frankly. What I say to them is, when you vote, what are you voting for? You're voting for politicians so that they can get into Parliament to change something. Now, I hope Jeremy Corbyn doesn't get in so that he can change things the way I don't want. But you think that's why him and his party are running. So what is the point in running to get into a Parliament where all your laws are made somewhere else and you have no choice but to implement directives and you don't even know what the regulations are because you don't even see them and they automatically become law? Why would you want to do that? It makes no sense. So I would say to these young kids, even if you want Jeremy Corbyn to win, why the hell do you want to be in the EU? Because he wouldn't be able to he certainly couldn't renationalise the utilities or whatever, that wouldn't be allowed because that would be against competition law. So why would you want to vote for a party that actually wants to be run by a foreign power under a foreign flag? It doesn't make any sense. And of course Jeremy Corbyn, for his entire, the one thing that me and Jeremy Corbyn had in common up until recently was that we both wanted to get out of the EU. And now suddenly he's changed his mind. Yeah. At least I'm consistent.
True. They seem to be gradually pulling back every little part of Brexit, don't they? One way that I think the Labour Party in particular under Jeremy Corbyn and with Momentum and have reached out to young people is social media, kind of saying, look, the BBC they do their thing, we're going to do ours. Should UKIP adopt a similar approach and focus more on the social media side to reach young people and older people than the BBC?
Yeah, and this is what I'm trying to, and you're talking to the worst possible person because I don't understand it, I'm too old. And, this is why I need young people like you and people who actually understand how it works. So I can give the message, but you'd actually do the thing of making sure it goes out to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. Do you mind if I make a comment on the media? Because it's, I'm going to be 64 shortly, you're 16, there's practically 50 years between us. And I started watching news and current affairs when I was about 10 years old. I got interested, used to switch. I used to watch all the programme documentaries, because in those days it was the Cold War, it's quite exciting. Who's Mr. Khrushchev? Is he going to blow us all up? And I got into this. Do you know I don't watch the news anymore, except to watch the headlines. In the last few years, I've just gradually stopped watching because there is no point. Because all you're hearing is an establishment narrative about how you should think. The BBC could teach Dr. Girls a thing or two about the manipulation of news. They don't actually lie to you. It's what they don't tell you, and it's the way they tell you things that have happened, and the way they dress them up, and the way they present them. And there is no point in, Channel 4 I can't even watch, it's just pointless, it's just pure left-wing propaganda, don't even hide it. BBC is very subtle in the way it does it. And apart from the headlines, where's there been an earthquake, where is there a war, the major events, I watch that. The minute they start to talk about the political stories, you could write the script yourself. There's no point in watching it, and I switch over to watch something more interesting. And I think that's a terrible indictment of our news and current affairs channels in this country, that someone like me, and it isn't just me, I'll tell you this story, it's true. I was talking to one of my Labour MEP colleagues recently, and I said this to him, he said, absolutely true, I don't watch it either anymore. So they've got two people on a different kind of divide. He's a Remainer, wants to stay in, there's me, and we both can't watch this rubbish. So I think it's vitally important that UKIP uses these new technologies in order to try and get our message out to as many people as possible. So I'll do the talking, you do the recording, and I'll leave the rest to you.
That sounds like a good plan to me. What time is it? Right, I think we'll wrap up just about there. Thank you very much for speaking to us today.
Can I give you a little copy of my book?
Sure,
which I hope that you'll find interesting, and thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.